Okie doke. So what I have here is something I've always wanted to do for a little while, and that is to share the way I do things when it comes to preparing my adventure notes. So typically this is just adventure notes. I will have done some world building before now, usually the city, the region, the basics of the world. In this case, we're playing a campaign that I think is our fourth campaign in this world between various groups, and so there's a lot of lore that's just known, but each location that they haven't been to before is new, and I try to make it alive. So I will do some additional world building on top of what you see here, and the example I'm going to do today here is going to be for a new town in the Titan West Empire, which has kind of a Western feel to them. They're also known as the Titan Western, or Titan West, or there's a bunch of different names for them. But that's where we're going to be taking place here. And what I have is a template now for making adventures, which is heavily based around Powered by the Apocalypse. It's just fantastic for creating elements. And then, as you'll see, I'm trying a more Powered by the Apocalypse style adventure where I don't have things as nailed down as I typically would, and I allow myself to use the different threats and as I need, as I feel they should come up as twists. I can just change it up and I don't feel as locked in. Kind of like a dungeon where every room is in a fixed place and the monsters are in fixed places for the most part. This is kind of the opposite of that. Now, it's great if you're running an open area and they can go anywhere they want and there's lots of moving pieces. It's very difficult if it's a dungeon. Well, you'll see what I mean. But essentially what we have here is just let's create the different elements of an adventure. So really quickly, it's the basic premise. So here you type a few sentences, maybe a paragraph, try to, keep it under 500 or 1,000 words, about exactly what's going on, why it's going on, and the cool elements that you want to capture later on. And then you got themes. I sometimes, honestly, I'll go to adventure themes. I like to create themes, and you'll see how I use them a little bit later on, but they essentially help me stay true to the story it is I want to tell. If I want to tell a Western, and in fact, you'll see one of the themes I have for this game, for this adventure, is going to be Western. I write Titan West because that's what we call it in game, but it has a lot of Western feel. And so I want to make sure that my themes aren't forgotten, which means every element that I create down below, every monster, NPC, location, loot, it has to have a Western feel to it. It needs to come back to that theme, or else I feel like I'll have a story that doesn't feel the way I intended it to. And I have, you'll see here, 3 themes. Sometimes I'll throw in even more. And in fact, I'll throw in like 3 more themes down here as well. And, these themes, I like to make player elements that are true to their characters or classes or backstory, and then that way I'm tying things in to inherent elements about themselves, which I have this whole thing about breadth and depth of lore building and storytelling, and how we can just keep visiting a new city every week and meeting these vast and different races and meet tons of NPCs and fight tons of monsters, or we could spend the next adventure exploring what it means to be an orc, and then the adventure after that maybe the honor of the orcs, the adventure after that the dishonor of the orcs. And there's just an infinite amount of lore that we could bounce around just inside of a single class, and I don't need to rethink anything. I don't have to invent a city. All I have to do is just think a little bit more about what it means to be an orc. And we can explore that. And usually it means a lot more to the players than if they meet these other fantastical cities, because, the player is an orc. Okay, I'm spending a lot of time talking about this stuff. I'm also trying to show you how far we can get done in an hour as well. And because I think this is one of the quickest methods for creating adventures. The tricky part of those stat blocks, the extras, the stat blocks, music, art, if you want to look any of that up, maps, tokens. Yeah, you'll see. Okay, so next up, I write a little hook, an opening scene. This one here, I stole directly from Dungeon World, and they always said, start with a bang. start with something exciting. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So whatever it is, whatever our opening scene is when I introduce them into this adventure, hopefully at the very beginning of the session, this introduction will be happening, because this was kind of designed as a session tool by the Lazy GM. Sorry, I said Dungeon World. This is Lazy GM. Had this start with a big bang. I apologize. And he was writing a set of tools for creating a session, not an adventure. So he wanted every session to start with a bang, even if it was partway through some other adventure. Start it exciting and get everybody up and fighting. Usually fighting, but it doesn't have to be. It could be anything. So we're going to start something exciting. Then we will design our monster, or at least we'll pick the name. So as you can see here, the first thing I want to do is just pick all the names and concepts. And then on the second swoop, we're going to go through and elaborate everything. So here we might, choose the name, what it is they, are doing, what their goals are, some powers and things we think we have for them, for the monster. And then we'll worry about the stat block later. Although for this adventure, you know what I think? I don't think I'm going to choose any stat blocks I have to make myself. It's a lot of effort to make new stat blocks. I'll look through the homebrew, and if I can find something in homebrew, go for it. But I think just only existing stat blocks for me for this time. So yeah, I create the monster. Then I got the minions. Again, this is very much like Dungeon World or Lazy GM, Monster of the Week, anything powered by the Apocalypse, which are what all those game systems are based on. So we choose their name. We come up with impulse or goals, like what it is they're doing. A minion usually means they work for the monster. Okay, so a minion doesn't necessarily have to be a humanoid. It could be beasts that they've allied with. It could be plants they've planted to defend, arcane constructs that have been made, anything that kind of gets in their way. And anything as an NPC, I like to think of as not hostile, but neutral or perhaps helpful. If they were hostile, they'd probably be a minion here. I guess they could also be hostile here as well, but they're not affiliated with the monster or the minions. They're just someone else who wants to get in your way. So if one of you has, say, a contract on your head, perhaps one of the NPCs here will be an assassin or a bounty hunter who's come to take you in. Of course, that bounty hunter could be working for the monster, scratch my back, I scratch your back. Who knows? It's up to you. Locations. Again, I stole this from Lazy GM, but they all have it. Dungeon Worlds and Monster of the Week. Fantastic name for a fantastic description. Specifically fantastic because locations should be really cool. It's a fantasy game. I like mundane. Like, I think Matt Mercer pulls off mundane really nice by adding just sort of this really rich lore that people explore. I think that's cool too, but don't be afraid to lean a little bit more towards the fantasy. I think most players actually do appreciate that more than they do some kind of full realism. There should be at least something, some signature element that's not typical and that they can enjoy, even if that's the only anachronistic thing to a real Westrel campaign. Of course, random encounters, if you want to have them. This is good if they're travel locations. Like, for example, how are my players going to get to the place where all this happens? There is going to be a travel. And so I may want to have some random encounters just, again, to help feed the theme and show them the kind of world that they're getting into. I mean, these aren't just things to use up resources. They're powerful storytelling elements. They advertise future threats. They share the themes. They introduce you to the people and their customs, the morale of the place, and they hit home our themes, which is the most important thing that I'm going for here. So everything I do has to touch the themes I choose above. I also want to set up combat map, sound, lightning, blah, 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 blah. But again, that's like pass 2, right? We're going to go through and do this. And then this will be like pass 2, where we go and finish everything off, polish it up, turn it into a finished encounter. Here, loot, again, same thing. I like to have roll a couple hordes, perhaps, on a treasure generator online, but I basically see how much gold, treasure, magic items I want to hand out, what kind of magic items I want to hand out. Again, I'm not going to do any stat blocks, so I'm also not going to choose anything that doesn't already exist somewhere in the D&D Beyond magic items guide. But again, these also have to fit my theme, right? It's not going to be very cool if I I'm in the middle of the Titan West, which is a desert, and again, very Western feel. And then all of a sudden, I have, some fire brim staff that has all this demonic iconography on it. We're just like clashing. It's fine. Like, I could tell how the story could be twisted to do that, but then it's less of a Western story at that point. It becomes a Western demon story. And unless demon is one of my themes up here, it's no. Right? I want to stay true and tell the tightest story that I can. I think that'll give us the best results. And they're fine with twists, but I have to know that going into it. And of course, that's always the plan. What actually happens, who knows, right? Anything can happen once we get started. And then we got the loot. This I just added. This is something the lazy GM wants you to have, and that's 10 things or however many number of things that you can learn. Clues that you can pick up, pieces of lore that are available that help you in completing the adventure, or share with you the motives for things. Like, if you're following clues, you definitely need clues and lore, because those clues are how you figure out where to go to next, what to investigate next. So that's how that works. Typically I just don't do this. It's just not necessary, because if I know all of these other elements, right, then and one of my players does an investigatory roll or perception roll, lore check, anything like that I would then have to insert one of these items into. I just make one up going, oh, okay, well, you found that these minions came from this place, meaning, and you don't think they were sent. Like, the evidence would suggest that they're not acting of their own volition. And so they come from there. You might be able to find more clues as to who sent them, or perhaps even find the individual who sent them to you. I mean, it's just that easy. I don't need to write, Vorlax is at the Temple of Doom, right? Because, I know he's there because I will have set it up in the locations. I know the adventure, but this can still be helpful. Sometimes it's nice to throw things in here that you don't know, aren't pivotal to the adventure, because you're going to just know those, but that also feed into the theme of things. So I don't know. We'll get into it. We're going to try it today anyway. And then Midnight Clock. This is a Monster of the Week convention. I really like it. Dungeon World has something similar, but it doesn't quite work the same way. Theirs are called Grim Portents and blah, blah, blah. Either way, this is the progression of events. What would happen in this area? What terrible things would go down if the adventurers never interceded? So let's imagine like a mind flayer was taking over a small village, right? They live inside the sewers. Well, during the day, you'd say, the Illithid moves in. The next step, they have a single person who's been acting as their operative, sabotaging certain things around town. The Illithid then comes up with a solution to the plan and pitches it through this thrall that they have, which then perhaps it's a food shortage, so they find extra food, the thrall pitches it, whatever, but the food is tainted, it makes everybody ill, and they can be taken over psychically. So now we've got an entire village that is under the direct psychological control of a single mind flayer. Mind flayer is starting to turn into an elder brain with the associated power, starting to draw in some holy paladin order nearby. They begin to fall prey to the powerful effects as well, and then there's a full-on new nation that erupts, led by an elder brain. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever the sort of end state is for this particular adventure, and it should be kind of world-changing, or at least seismic on our players' scale. Right? It doesn't need to be like, oh, the world is destroyed. It could be simply, oh, you don't get to woo the girl. Like, whatever the stakes are, we're going to have fun. And don't forget, slice of life is also important. We need slice of life. What does your mundane, normal life do to get in the way and to make meaningful the decisions you make in the adventure? Because if we just adventure, then we're nothing but mindless treasure hoarders, right? With nothing to lose except our own lives. But if you have family that's counting on you, you might not do something particularly reckless. You might choose to let something, or at least be tempted by that decision, right? And then the fact that you did do it, because let's face it, the player wants to do it, so the character likely will, says something about you. You can go through a transformative moment. But okay, man, oh man, do I love to talk about this stuff. What we're going to do is try to show you how long I think it takes to do this. I think we could do it at least without tokens and location maps, like battle maps. Like if we wanted to go theater of the mind, pretty sure we could do this in under an hour. We'd have to go really, really quick though, and not let ourselves get distracted by anything. Also, here's the thing, right? If I really wanted to, you don't even need stat blocks. I mean, if you're a DM with as much experience as I am, you can improvise a stat block. I mean, you should see Monster of the Week monsters. Like, they're literally, okay, vampire. He has 15 HP because you have like one, well, I think for a monster, it would be like 7 to 15 would be like the absolute most. Right. We'll say 2 armor and I mean, they have like slam attack, which does 2 harm, and a bite attack, you know, like it's just that simple. Like, and that'll be the end of it. We'll say bite attack, 4 harm, drain, and he also has the other keywords of fly, immortal, shape changer, and all of a sudden that's all I need. That's all I need to tell the story, because the other mechanics are based around simplicity as well. So I just need to sort of define in my head canon what shape changer means for this monster, and I'm good to go. And I don't need it spelled out. I can just use the fiction to help guide what it is. And then whatever I chose to do, whatever limitations I chose to put on it, that becomes the new canon for this monster. That's it. So if my vampire can turn into humanoids, then it can turn into humanoids. If it can't, then it's probably just turning into beasts, or even the traditional beasts that we're used to seeing, bats, wolves, that sort of thing. Okay. But so I mean, I've run whole D&D combats, even an entire adventure, just like this, and I don't make up the rolls. I usually assign a +6 to something they're good at, a +3 to something they're tangentially good at, and a 0 to things they're not good at. And I mean, I just fucking roll. That's it. I know the priest is going to be good at religion. I know they're going to be good against undead, whatever. And when the players roll, I set a DC, and if they miss the DC by more than 5, I usually do something a little awful to them outside of combat. I haven't done this inside combat yet, but I borrowed the hard and the soft moves concepts. You'll see, I can get more into it later, from Dungeon World Monster of the Week. Anything powered by the apocalypse is the hard and soft move are mainstay to those systems. Okay, but we're going to get rid of this here, and we're actually going to try this. Now, just so you're aware, I did start the other one, but I'm talking like less than 5 minutes. So I copied and pasted it in here. I'll make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see, and we start from the top. So here's the basic premise, and this is a spoiler, by the way. Maerx, if you see this somehow before your adventure is over, this is a spoiler for you. It's Ophelia, which I spelt wrong. She's a sphinxical monster, and in my world, monsters are often combinations of 2 things. And so a sphinxical is a sphinx combined with something else. And they're typically irredeemably evil and destructive to the environment. Sphinxicals are particularly powerful because they control the threads of fate, and therefore, as well as possibility and causality. They can literally make tragedy around you, and they should be able to, kill you no matter what, because they can control what convergence of events happens and just bring tragedy to you until you're dead. Sphinxical is not actually a word, so I'm going to add it in here. But either way, Ophelia, sphinxical monster, believes the dire men are coming to kill her. Visions consume her mind, so they kill the dire men. Now, I should say these are the old dire men, because they our heroes have taken over the name of an old troop whose members had died, called the dire men. I don't know if the players know the other members have died, but they're going to learn here. Now that it's reactivated, that ancient prophecy can now still be enacted. So, of course, Ophelia is freaking out. And now her brother, the Shadeling, whom our players have had some history with, and the Shadeling suffered a mental trauma from being exposed to 10,000 billion years of consciousness. Yeah, it's a thing. Being trapped in an endless time war. It's a thing that our players are aware of. They have the two of them, they have a town of cultists. Now, I should say before, Ophelia was attacked by the Diremen. In fact, it was the attack against Ophelia that killed the Diremen. Except for one, who was then killed later. And that one, I should say, is Jin. And Jin is Maerx's father, the person whose sort of arc this is. And you'll see here, down here. But either way, so I'm thinking now that this adventure, the basic premise of it is going to be a siege. They are hunkered down. It's like the frickin' Alamo, and our players have to sneak in and probably kill Ophelia. I mean, we have to figure out what's going on here. Anyway, they're going to be drawn here. I don't have a hook that says, ooh, there's something here we need to deal with. Only what I left for my player before. Where is it here? Fronts. For Maerx. Ordovogin. Yeah, I got to get that in there. The Shadeling loves his mistress, sister now. It's been changed. Gynosphinx has been driven mad with the desire to know the order of all things, and she's been consumed by the concern that Diremen will come to kill her. She sees it set in the endless pattern of destiny, but he cannot. Still, he wipes them clean from the earth, so it's actually the Shadeling that kills them, right? The last to die was Jin, however, the Diremen have been restored, and blah, 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 blah. And there's a little story about some of what's happened with the Shadeling as well. Right, he attempted to kill the players in a doom web, but was forced to retreat. And then, yeah, he's become a god, a paladin of fate as well. But then he got trapped in that endless time war and then had to retreat once he escaped. All right, I will be right back.